Okay, this is Adolf Hitler by Eileen Hayes. Chapter 11. The last chapter. Would you believe the last chapter is actually titled The Last Chapter? Anyway, Chapter 11. The last chapter. The forces which these defendants represent are the deepest, darkest, and most sinister forces in society. By their fruits we best know them. Their acts have bathed the world in blood and set civilization back a century. Robert H. Jackson, Prosecutor, Nuremberg, November 1945. The world has changed since the Nazis controlled Germany, and much of that change resulted in one way or another from the war Hitler started and the crimes he inspired. When Adolf Hitler committed suicide, he left behind him a shattered nation, a shocked world, and the smoldering remains of violence, hate, and murder without precedent. He also left the men who believed in his programs and helped them carry them out. Now some of those men had to face judgment. The Allies assembled an international military tribunal in Nuremberg, Germany, and on November 20th, 1945, 21 men were brought to trial on charges of conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Evidence presented during the trial catalogued Nazi horrors in grisly detail. When the verdicts were handed down on September 30th, 1946, only 3 defendants were acquitted. Of the rest, 11 were sentenced to death by hanging, and the others were given prison terms. Hans Frank, the sadistic tyrant who ran the general government section of Poland, tried to blame everything on the conveniently dead Hitler. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel and General Adolf Jodl, 2 of Hitler's military chiefs, claimed that they had acted as honorable soldiers serving their country. Ernest Kaltenbrunner, head of the Reich Security Main Office, denied that he bore responsibility for or even knew about the mass murder of the Jews. All 4 were hanged at Nuremberg. Albert Speer, the Armaments minister who tried to stop Hitler from destroying Germany, went to Spandau prison for 20 years. He died in 1981. Hermann Göring, condemned to death, poisoned himself hours before he was scheduled to be hanged. Heinrich Himmler never made it to Nuremberg. He poisoned himself shortly after the Allies captured him in May of 1945. Rudolf Höss, Auschwitz's commandant, was tried in Warsaw in 1947, convicted and hanged at Auschwitz. Adolf Eichmann, organizer of the Final Solution, was caught by Israeli agents in Argentina in 1960. He was tried in Jerusalem and was hanged in 1962. And Joseph Mengele, the doctor who cheerfully tortured and killed children in Auschwitz, fled to South America. He drowned in Brazil in 1979, and his remains were found in 1985. A new world order. From the ashes of World War II, a new world order rose. What began as a wartime alliance became the United Nations, officially chartered in 1945. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as the new world superpowers. The rivalry between them would dominate world politics for 5 decades. When the Allies took over Germany in 1945, they faced the huge task of remaking its educational system, government, judiciary, and economy out of the mess left by the Nazis. As planned, they divided Germany into 4 zones to be occupied by the French, the British, the Soviets, and the Americans. Britain, in the Soviet sector, was similarly divided. The conquerors abolished all organizations that were served as seedbeds for the revival of militarism or Nazism. Within months, it became clear that the Soviets intended their zone to remain separate from the other 3. In 1949, the split became official. the three western zones were combined into the new Democratic Federal Republic of Germany, and the Soviet zone became the German Democrat Republic, a communist state with Soviet-style one-party rule. Stockpiles of a new kind of war-making tool, atomic weapons, began to grow, and with them, fear of nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Divided Germany became a pawn in this Cold War between East and the West. The Western nations formed a military alignment called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, with the Federal Republic or West Germany as an important member. East Germany was admitted to NATO's Soviet-led counterpart called the Warsaw Pact. In 1961, the Soviet backing, East German authorities built a wall topped with barbed wire around West Berlin to keep East Germans from escaping to freedom. Tens of thousands still managed to flee, and a few were killed trying. The Berlin Wall stood for almost 3 decades until European communism collapsed in the bloodless revolutions of 1989. The 1990 Germany was reunited and held its first 3 elections as one nation since 1932. The Nazis' genocide program galvanized Jews worldwide. Many nations had turned away Jews trying to escape Hitler, with tragic results. After the war, a movement to found a Jewish state begun in the late 19th century, gained enough strength to make that dream a reality. In November 1947, the United Nations approved the creation of such a state. On May 14, 1948, British control of Palestine officially ended and the State of Israel came into existence. It enacted a law authorizing Israeli agents to track down anyone who had been committed crimes anywhere against the Jewish people. A small Jewish community re-emerged in Germany, numbering around 30,000 for much of the post-war era. Is Nazism dead? The last chapter has not been written on Hitler's legacy. The story of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis seemed to have no end. Into the 1990s, Hitler's henchmen were still being hunted down and brought to trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Holocaust survivors still searched for loved ones that lost 50 years earlier. Jews who had been expelled from their homes by the Nazis were still trying to reclaim their property, and a new surge of right-wing extremism began to plague Germany as it struggled with the economic and political problems of reunification, transforming the overstaffed communist economy in Eastern Germany into a leaner, free market system threw a lot of people out of work. People without jobs are angry people, as in the United States during tough times, some of those angry people look for scapegoats. Political parties in the Nazi mold sprang up, including one led by a former SS officer that in 1992 claimed to have 22,000 members. German neo-Nazis, invoking Hitler's name, attacked Jews and immigrants, killing some people and leaving the country's 6 million foreign residents fearful. For the first time since Hitler was vanquished, Jews began leaving Germany to escape prosecution. There was a significant difference, though, between the racist violence racking Germany in the 1990s and the Nazi attacks of the 1920s and the 1930s. This time, ordinary Germans turned out by the hundreds of thousands to protest the actions of the right-wing extremists and to demand that the government fight back. This time, Germans were acutely painfully aware of what could happen if the majority remained silent while the rights of a minority were trampled. But the task of containing the racism and the violence remained immense. Hitler's Holocaust did not start with the gas chambers of Auschwitz. It did not start with the brutality of Kristallnacht. It began with the first tiny dent of civil liberties, the first denial of protection of one small group's rights. Would Germany or any other nation let another Hitler rise? Would we recognize in time the quiet, insidious attacks on freedom? And most important, what would we do to stop them? Justice Robert H. Jackson, a prosecutor in Nuremberg trials, opened his case with the words that resound through the decades. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating, the civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored, because it cannot survive their being repeated. End of 11. End of chapter. End of story. The end.